once again. Madam MD, Honorable Ministers, the representative of the civil society organizations in environment and climate change. I wanted to call you girls, boys, but let me call you youth. Leaders of today, leaders of tomorrow. Welcome to Nyandungu Eco-Park. We are delighted. We are privileged to have you here. And we hope we are going to have interesting, interactive discussions. At this point, I want to hand over to Grace to take us through. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Welcome to our very youthful corner with the good air. So my name is Ineza, but as you know, you are here. We are meeting with the youth from Rwanda and civil society. If you may allow, we can give just 1 minute to each of them, and they can give their name, their organization, the impact, and what is going to be their hope here at the session. So if you allow, we can start from the far end. Thanks.
Thank you. Madam MD, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, my dear colleague, young leaders, good afternoon. We are very grateful for offering us this great opportunity to be able to meet you. My name is Emmanuel Sindikugabo. I am a climate crisis advocate, and I'm a co-founder and executive director of We Do Green. We Do Green is a youth-led environmental organization which started in 2018, and we are inspired by the need to tackle climate-induced poverty, especially as a result of the global climate crisis, which degrade our environment. We have two main programmatic focus. Our first focus is facilitating youth to meaningfully contribute in policy formulation and implementation. And out of this, we have been able to establish a community of youth champions from 20 youth-led organizations. We also have another thematic area of powering up youth-led green and circular innovation. We have been able to, through this, we develop, we promote human capital investment who can be able to respond to climate crisis. And we have been able to raise and prepare 6,404 young climate justice stewards. I hope that today's session will give us a further understanding on how can more cooperate with IMF and development partners and the government. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is David Nyonsaba, Madam MD, Honorable Ministers, fellow youth. I work for an organization called Prime Biodiversity Conservation, but what we do so far that we feel happy, we work with children in the range of 7 to 12 years in 50 schools. So far we're working with 2,500 young children, and so far we have seen them starting ideas, initiative from children, and we are so happy. So today I hope that it becomes a commitment that the government of Rwanda and you push forward to work with children and young people. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Excellent MD, Honorable Minister. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm called Honorini Singizwe, the Executive Director of a youth-led organization called Young Volunteer for the Environment. Our aim, we are trying to develop the capacity and what we call eco-citizenship of young people for their involvement in the promotion of sustainable development among community. To achieve that, we are trying to develop different programs, including our program of environmental and climate education in the school. So far, we are working with more than 20 schools in Kigali and across the country, and we have managed to empower different young people, like over 300 in different corners of the country. But also we have other different capacity building programs that are helping young people to understand the issue of climate change and the trend discussion on how we are solving this global issue. And we are part of Rwanda Climate Negotiator. And through that, because we recognize that environmental protection, conservation is intergeneration mission, We also try to involve in the implementation of on-ground activity, like focusing on restoration of landscape. Now we are working with more than 50 small-scale farmers on what we call agroecology, promoting them on organic compost. Among other activities, that's what we are trying to do. Through this session, we are hoping to understand how IMF incorporate young people in their program, especially in this new sustainability and resilience facility. Thank you.
Thank you, MD. Thank you, honorable ministers. Thank you, dear colleagues. My name is Concord Kugiman, founder and executive director of Save Environment Initiative. First, let me take this opportunity to thank the government of Rwanda for giving us this opportunity as youth. We are trying to reach with the students, those who are still young, to build a culture of liking environment when they are still young, to play their role when they are still young. Even we worked with the smallholders, farmers, for restoration of degraded land, for increasing productivity from their lands. I hope on this session, further collaboration with IMF and youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam MD, Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Faustin Vuningoma. I coordinate the Rwanda Climate Change and Development Network. It's a civil society network that brings together 73 local NGOs that intervene in environment and climate change concerns. I'm sure you are aware that at the Paris in 2015, there was a beacon of hope that was created, looking at the way countries were committed to tackle issues of climate change with set targets on adaptation and mitigation. Rwanda was no exception, and therefore Rwanda developed the NDCs that they submitted, and we as civil society are committed to contributing to the implementation of the NDCs. Equally, to contributing to the implementation of the green growth and climate resilience strategy, supporting government to build climate resilience communities, but equally responding to issues of forest and landscape restoration, responding to issues of energy that are an issue, responding to issues of gender, because gender and climate change is a critical concern, but equally responding to issues of health. Our hope is that as civil society, we've got somebody that we can tell to join our bandwagon of advocating for a cooler planet, because it is a concern to the global community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I guess this is my turn. My name is Ineza. I am an ecofeminist, impact-driven actor here in Rwanda, and I'm part of the Rwandan youth-led organization called the Green Protector, which is the organization I started in 2017 after realizing that as women, we also have a voice in protecting our environment, and there's also a way we can do it, even if we can start doing it small. So our main focus of activity is through climate education, where we work down more than 15 schools and reach more than 3,000 children, and we do climate action. We have conducted more than 10 activities, and we also do climate policy, where we ensure that we are trying to elevate Rwandan experience to the international level so that we can all have tangible hope. So before I go back to ask if colleagues have questions, allow me to just ask like my favorite question that I'm having right now. So you know, like Rwanda is not a myth when we say that Rwanda is beyond what the world is expecting in terms of inclusion of women and the youth. And coming from my experience, I was included in being a climate policy actor since 2018. And the lesson that I'm learning right now is that Rwanda inclusion is different from other countries. So for example, at COP27, we get the chance to attend, and our main prime message that we were hoping was to see the establishment of the loss and damage finance now. But when we see how other young people are being included in their own country, it's not like how Rwanda does it, because Rwanda does it in a way that is not tokenistic. So as now currently IMF is into restructuring, I want to ask, is there an opportunity that we as Rwandan who are young people involved in the policy, we can influence that the IMF current policy restructuring is going to be having that central voice of young people that is going to breed the hope, but also give us an opportunity to help our country be financially stable. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to all of you. Where I stay, I learned that your name in English means kindness. Yes. So very kind of you and all of you to be here. And so much of our conversation today is about kindness. Kindness towards each other, kindness towards nature, kindness toward the generations to come. So let me first introduce myself, and then I would answer your question, and then we would open it up for more discussion. My professional background is environment. I did my PhD in environmental economics. And the reason I got to work on environment is because in my youth, somebody in my family got very sick because of groundwater pollution. Completely avoidable if he only knew not to drink this water. If we had information about pollution, he could have just drank clean water and his health would have been protected. And the big message to me was that transparency matters, access to information matters, and the interaction between people and their environment is very important for the well-being of everyone. Went on a very interesting journey in my life. I was a professor for 14 years. Then I went to the World Bank, and I was there for 17 years as starting from environmental economists to be vice president of the World Bank. Then my country called on me to go back to Europe and become a commissioner. I'm sure you have heard of the European Commission. It is run by representatives of the members of the European Union, and I was the Bulgarian member of the Commission. And at that time, I learned a lot about kindness, because for 5 years I was humanitarian and crisis commissioner. And what I realized was that we are in a more shock-prone world. And natural shocks, in addition to conflicts, financial turbulence, all of this requires for us to build more resilience of people, resilience of our society, but also the resilience of our planet. So afterwards, I went back to the World Bank. This is how I came to Rwanda in 2018 for the first time. And now I have the incredible privilege and responsibility to be the head of an institution that is very important for its members. We have 190 members. What we work primarily on are good policies for people today and in the future. And there is no way to design good policies unless we comprehensively look at all the factors that define well-being. What are they? We know. Human capital, physical capital, institutional capital, and of course, natural capital. So as economists, this is an institution mostly of economists, we have to integrate all these aspects and then work with our members to have good policies, and also for us to provide them with financing so they can implement these good policies. So to answer your question, we craft space for youth in two ways. First, by engaging with countries, listening to all voices, including, of course, the voices of young people. We are an institution that is visibly committed to gender equality, and I'm saying visibly, here I am. At the top of the IMF, we have 5 people, me and my 4 deputies, 3 women, 2 men. And in parentheses, when I was appointed, my predecessor was a woman, Kristalina Lagarde. She did a great job. And I'm working for the first time in the building of the IMF as the new managing director. The dean of the board meets me and says, you know, it looks like, when are we going to have a man again to lead the IMF? What is happening here? And my answer was, well, in 65 years, it would be again your turn, because before Christine Lagarde, it was men. But to close this, to say we want to listen to voices, and this is the first avenue for including young people. Second, we are extremely concerned about intergenerational mobility and intergenerational equality. In other words, I'm doing better than my parents did better than their parents. I want my daughter to do better than me, and my grandchildren to do better than my daughter. So unless we think of prosperity as something that we have to build over time for the future, we are not doing our job. So the fact that we are here with you, I think says it all. We count on you to teach us what you think we should do better. Our resilience and sustainability trust, this is a new instrument. Very proud that Rwanda is among the first 4 countries to tap into it, the first in Africa. We really want to make it very impactful in how it mobilizes climate financing to transform the way the economy works. So in this, you talked about restructuring, revitalizing. Obviously, we can only succeed if we all work together. And my only plea for the young generation is, trust us. Sometimes I hear young people saying, you guys let us down. What you did for nature is all wrong. But trust us, we know our responsibility, and I appeal that we join forces to do better for the world. And I'm very interested what is on your mind. I cannot think of a better conference room in the whole world to have an engagement. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam MD. That's really insightful. And I like your closing that we have to trust you. And coming as a young Rwandan, I know I can trust, especially in policy. So I can give the floor to one question.
Thank you very much, Madam MD. I needed to tap into your wisdom. You know, as I said earlier, from Paris Agreement, we had hope that governments were going to take a step into changing the trajectory of what was happening globally. But what we are seeing currently makes us fear. We were in Glasgow, back to Sharm el-Sheikh. The 1.5 degrees was nothing like mentioned, if ever, very mutedly. And that one creates fear in the sense that people are no more concerned about the issue of actually curbing greenhouse gas emissions. Now we've even become more certain when you see the trend of the current COP28 presidency. There is fear in us on issues of interest, and if I can say, how do you see nations like ours in Africa? I am a climate change activist. I need to influence policies and the strategies in our countries. I want to influence nations not to tap into their natural resources, especially when it is fossil fuels. But you get to hear that in the global north, people are opening up, countries are opening up new coal fields. New pipelines are being constructed. And you ask yourself, where are we going? How do you advise me as an advocate going forward?
This is the question that in fact brings the IMF here. How can we change the trajectory so we can sustain increase of global temperature somewhere within 1.5 and 5 and 2 degrees Celsius? Where we are today, you're absolutely right. We are not in a good place. We have to cut global CO2 emissions by the end of this decade somewhere between 25 and 50% to achieve this Paris Agreement objective. When we put all the commitments of everybody and make a brave assumption these commitments would be followed, we will cut emissions this decade only by 11%. We are short. We also see how the turbulence that the war in Ukraine created in energy markets has pushed some countries that have made very strong commitments to step back. And that, of course, is very concerning. But if we decide to just give up and throw our hands in the air, things are not going to get any better. So what that requires from all of us is to step up, raise our voices. At the IMF, our contribution to raising that voice is through doing systematically the research as to what needs to be done, who has to do it, how it should be done. And then speak loud and clear. I was in Sharm el-Sheikh. I talked about the fact that we are nowhere near the ambition of the Paris Agreement. But I also said, and here is the IMF, we are making a big financial contribution to fight climate change. And we are, more importantly, changing the way we at the IMF think about development. So it is inclusive of reducing emissions and improving the resilience of our society, our economies, our people, and our planet. So I would urge us, rather than getting into finger pointing and saying, oh, you did wrong, roll our sleeves, do the right thing. Do the right thing everywhere. Here in Rwanda, you are doing the right thing. I'll tell you, I came to Rwanda knowing that what I would find here would be uplifting. And you have exceeded my expectations, because here, my belief that it is possible to protect our climate, adapt to the changes that already have taken place, that belief has been strengthened. And it is my message to climate activists is, yes, speak truth to power, but also focus on what we heard from the young people here. Focus on what can you do, what can I do, what can each and every one of us do so we can overcome what is an existential threat to our own existence. It is in Rwanda where one can see that with will, the existence of your gorillas was protected, and they're now multiplying, and the government is talking about expanding the protected areas because the gorillas are running out of space. Well, if we are able to protect the gorillas from extinction, we should be able to protect ourselves from it.
Thank you so much. I think that was a very good answer, and I like the fact that you mentioned that we can all do our part. And as IMF is now believing in just the green transition, that is the next future that we are all aspiring from. And here in the room, we have youth who are already doing action. So young people will have track records into innovation, green job opportunity. I'm curious to understand what can be like your guidance or like your footprint that you can give us on how we can move from advocacy to more concrete action, because globally we know that youth are tired to keep talking. Now we're taking action, and I'm speaking from the fact of being part of the global coalition, and we are technically the first organization to be giving grants to youth organization all around the world. So we had a grant of more than $100,000, and we are funding youth to take action to address loss and damage. So with that, what can be the footprint that we can take to go from advocacy to go beyond advocacy, take concrete action?
On loss and damage, and you mentioned it, and indeed that was one of the a few actual deliverables from Sharm el-Sheikh. What you did to get to it, you have to continue, and it is to amplify the voice of countries that, for no fault of their own, are dramatically impacted. Rwanda is impacted, but think of a country like the Marshall Islands, that the whole country is going to disappear in a couple of decades. So talking about that tremendous risk to existence of countries and communities, continue doing it. But what you demonstrated now is actually what I am a firm believer. You're focusing on the children. Getting children to be aware of why protecting our climates matter, and that each and every one of us can do something about it. This is incredibly powerful, not only because they are the future decision makers, they are the future ministers, but because when children speak to their parents, it is very effective. I once saw my granddaughter telling her dad was going with a plastic bottle in his hand, and she said, "Shame on you, you shouldn't use plastic." And so when kids set up a moral standard to their parents and grandparents, that is very powerful. So what you do with school kids, but don't teach them just that is important. Teach them what they can do in their little lives, what they can do to set up the right path for humanity.
Thank you so much. I don't know if you have a remaining question. The last. Don't be shy.
This is being called last call. Anybody who wants to ask a question, now is the time.
Going once.
Going once.
Twice.
David has a question. I can see it. He has a question, but he's not kind of...
Thank you very much again. My question, so this is, this is not a question. I was asked this question yesterday. Yesterday, I was glad to speak to German MPs about what Rwanda is doing. And they were asking about innovations and all of that. The question is, what are the things that in your trip in 3 days you learned in Rwanda that you think Rwanda can export everywhere? And what IMF can do to make sure that these good initiatives are exported?
Great question, David. The most important thing I learned is that Rwanda is way ahead of many other countries in recognizing that project financing is good, but not good enough. That project financing does not deliver scale. If we want to transform how the economy works, it has to be based on a programmatic approach in which we identify what are the barriers for scale, and then we concentrate on removing these barriers. This is the philosophy of the RST, and I heard it today. We had breakfast with actually the ministers present as well, and that is what I heard, that there is a very clear understanding that transforming means thinking of the policy fundamentals, not just of the projects. This is a very good project where we are, but it would be really effective and impactful if the concept gets translated all over Rwanda, and it becomes the way of action where it is appropriate. Yeah. So that is the most important thing I learned, that Rwanda has this. It has leapfrogged in its understanding of what does it mean to get to scale. We have discussed it with our team that we would like to use to really write a manual on the basis of our experience in Rwanda for other countries. And the other thing I heard that I completely subscribe to, what does Rwanda offer to private investors? I asked this question, and the answer was good governance. You come here, rule of law, good governance. So if we can get more countries to adopt that simple foundation for success, which is rule of law, good governance, then the world would be a much better place.
Thank you.
I also learned how is kindness in Rwanda. How do you say kindness? It is written, I should tell you my secret. The villa I'm staying in has your name.
Oh,
Written on it.
oh, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we are closing, but we are very honored to have this time to discuss with you, and we are taking into your wisdom, and we're going to buckle up and roll our sleeve and keep doing what we're doing right. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. I'm going to say, I just cannot resist. The world is in a very complicated place. The world economy is faced with tremendous difficulties. So we were finishing our annual meetings this year. And what was my message to our ministers and governors? Buckle up, do the right thing, exactly the way you finished.